Kristen, welcome to the Light Path podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I found you on my best friend TikTok, where I think I spend way too much time. But as soon as I saw one of your clips, I immediately went to your page and binged your wisdom. I love the way you explain things. So if you are listening to this, you are in for a treat. But first up, I'd love for you to tell us a bit about you and your background and how you ended up being such a wealth of wisdom for people in the kind of like energetic psyche self of all that you talk about.
Totally, I'd love to. Well, thank you for the compliment. So glad that you found me and that it resonated with you. I have a lot of fun making that content and trying to take my thoughts and turn them into something that people can understand and resonate to. But I am a quantum healer, a divine channel, and a visibility and transformation coach. So my specialty is in helping people overcome the fear of being seen.
Mm.
And that is the mission of all missions. I think for me, it's the thing I get the most excited about because I know how crippling it is. I spent most of my life terrified of being seen up until about a year and a half ago. And I just know how that affected every area of my life. I didn't know it at the time, but I saw as I healed those wounds.
Mm.
And as I went through that process, I started to see that the visibility wounds also are your love wounds, your money wounds. Like they're so intertwined. And I didn't realize that, like, when you truly access your authentic identity, it's clearing everything. Because I had done a lot of work, right? Like, I had done a lot of work on the
Mm.
money. I had done the love blocks. Like, I had done all of that, but nothing clicked the way it really clicked until I approached visibility. And so now it's my greatest passion. And I primarily help healers and light workers and those who have some type of a soul mission that they're here to express to overcome that fear and to step through. Really, the fear of being seen is the fear of being yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so stepping through that threshold to be who you are and then unapologetically express yourself in the world and also figure out how to do that because that can also be challenging to know how to communicate things.
I think it's really interesting that you realize that, by doing, the money block work or the love block work. And I think that I almost see that kind of work now as the gateway drug into authenticity
Yeah.
because it's like the surface level, like let's get a little bit of a payoff. But
Yeah.
really the deeper work is in authentic alignment with the true self. But when did the penny, like, was it a specific moment where the penny dropped for you that, this isn't about love and money? This is about me accepting me.
Yeah, there was a rock bottom for me. So my journey with visibility, it started in my rock bottom. Like I'll give you kind of the synopsis, but essentially, a year and a half ago, I walked away from a narcissistic family situation, and
Mm.
in doing that, I had to walk away from my entire life. So my career, like family, friend, like it was basically everything that was my identity. I was walking away from, and I had no backup plan, no financial safety net and no idea where I was going. And so I leave all of that. And in that moment, I realized my entire identity was wrapped up in everything that wasn't me. So it was in my corporate career, it was in who I was as a family member, who I was as a friend. Like all of these were the things that defined me. And so when I walked away from that, I was like, I don't know who I am and I don't know how to figure that out. Like, there was really nothing out there because a lot of times you hit the nail on the head with authenticity. The identity work that I see mostly in the market and that I saw at that time was like self concept work. But self concept is really like elevating your self worth of who you are, not figuring out who you are.
Mm.
And most of us are wearing masks that we don't even realize. Like we're shaped by what our family wants, what society says. Okay, like these little micro things that happen in the background that shape who we are, or how we even pursue our lives. And so, I just found myself at 37 years old at a rock bottom, no idea who I was, trying to figure out how to even approach that. How do you go down that self discovery journey? I remember someone even asked me, like a healer I was working with, she was like, well, what are your needs? And I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I don't know. I
Mm.
have no idea. Like, that's how, but I had been on the spiritual journey for a really long time. I had been deep in the healing journey. So I was like so shocked to be so deep and I had done a lot of healing work. It's not like I hadn't manifested or healed or had some of these things happen, but like to be so far in the journey and be like, wow, I have no idea who I am. And I'm realizing how many masks I've been wearing. that was the moment where I was just like, there's a real problem here. And like, if I don't fix this time, like, I don't know what happens with my life. Do I just keep repeating this cycle, you know?
Well, yeah, exactly. Or you just have to find a different mask, and it is
Yeah.
exhausting to be wearing.
Exhausting. It is, and you don't realize it because you don't even realize how many masks you're even wearing, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I found myself at rock bottom and I had all these ideas that I was trying to make work. So I had been a publicist prior. And so I was like trying to take on freelance clients, just like trying to make ends meet for these first few months, trying to buy myself time to figure out who I was, what did I want to do. I always wanted to be a healer in some capacity, but I also had all these stories in my head of like, it's hard to make it. I've seen so many of my friends fail at it. I had seen like, oh, it takes 5 years to become profitable, or like just all these stories that were not mine, but I took on as belief systems, just hearing them. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I could ever make that happen. And so my guides, my spirit guides, God was, telling me, post your channeled messages. And I was like, absolutely not. That's insane. We'll not be doing that. Because I also had never shared my channeled messages before, so I didn't even know if they were real. Like there was no validation for this to know. Like, is this legitimate? Am I making this up? Like all of those thoughts. And so I keep getting that message and I'm like, I'm not doing that. I was also really attached to like my identity as a corporate executive. And I was like, I'm not going from like corporate executive to TikTok psychic. Like that's too much for me. But that is exactly what ended up happening. And so I was 3 days before my rent was due. And all of a sudden, all my freelance clients stopped paying their invoices. All of my leads stopped getting back to me. Like everything froze and my guides were super quiet. And so I was crying and I was like, I did not walk away from my whole life, blow everything up, walking away from this narcissistic situation to like now, like totally crumble. And so I was praying and asking for help. And the answer I received was post your channeled message on TikTok. And I was like, what? I was so devastated with that answer because I was like, what is that going to do? I don't have a following. I've never posted on social media. I'm terrified of being seen, terrified of sharing my gifts. Like, I need money today. I don't have time to build a following. Like none of this made sense, right? So I fought it, but a couple hours later, I was finally like, I'm at rock bottom. I have no other option. If this is the only guidance that God is giving me, I have to listen to it. So I sit down to record a channel message. It took me 5.5 hours to record like a less than 2 minute video.
No. Oh my goodness.
So painful. I was like freezing. I would get halfway through and I'd be like, Kristen, nobody knows what you're talking about. You sound crazy. Like it was just so painful. Anybody who knows the journey of filming content can probably relate to that feeling. But I was like, ugh. So anyways, I post it and within hours, all of a sudden all my clients paid their invoices.
Yeah,
All of a
wow.
sudden, so like the money didn't come from TikTok, but because I crossed that threshold, the gates opened back up and I was like, okay, if you'll keep paying my bills, God, I will keep posting on TikTok. And so I did. I just kept posting, and that was the entryway into visibility for me. It took me getting to the rock bottom
Yeah.
to do it. I had been getting this message for a long time, but I was too afraid.
I think you've hit on something so important there. Like even if you're not feeling called to do, the work that you and I do, but even just listening to your intuition, like none of us know how we do this. There's not
Right.
some, we didn't go to Hogwarts. Like there isn't like you just have to surrender and trust it. And same thing with your intuition. Like there's no formula. Don't believe anyone out there that says that there's a formula to this or anyone knows what they're doing. But it is about just following and respecting the intuition. And it's never about the thing. Like
Right.
it was about sharing your channeled message, but that just allows the flow and the care to come in from where it needs to come in from. So, like listening to your story, I hope that people heard like all you can do is trust. All you can
All the
do.
time. It's all. And it's the hardest thing to do, but everything that has elevated me in any way in my life has required me to trust the unknown, to trust the
Yeah.
guidance that I'm getting, to take the action and to do it without attaching an outcome to it. Because the outcomes that we think are never the ones that are, we're always being guided to a higher path. So it's like sometimes even when I'll have clients, they're like, well, I got this guidance and I took this action and it didn't work. And I'm like, well, that's because you assigned an outcome to it. Like the guidance you got wasn't, oh, if you do this, you'll get this. It's like the guidance is always leading you to a higher path. You're just the one attaching these like outcomes to it along the way. And then when you don't get that outcome, you feel like you can't trust the guidance that you're getting.
Oh my gosh, so important. I mean, we weren't even planning on talking about this, but that is
Yeah.
so important. Um, but putting yourself out there, it is hard. It is hard, and as a viewer, I just looked at you and I was like, oh, got it all together with Jane and your diagrams, and it's so in sync. I love this, and so you wouldn't know that there was this underlying evolving of
Yeah.
opening to being seen. So let's talk about that. Like, because you explain it so well. What
Mhm.
is the fear of being seen? What is that?
The fear of being seen is truly the fear of being yourself, that something about you is not okay. Because when I talk about the fear of being seen, it's in every area of your life. It's not just posting on social media. It's not just getting on stage and talking. It's about being who you are in your relationships at work. And I remember for me specifically, my life was compartmentalized. Like
Yeah.
I was one person for my family, one person for people at work. Then I had this very spiritual side. Like everybody knew I was spiritual, but nobody knew the extent of it. Like it was so compartmentalized, right? Because it's who I felt safe to be in different situations. And I used to kind of pride myself on that. Like I'm kind of a chameleon. I can fit in anywhere, but that's actually a big problem because then I'm just fitting in, right? Versus being who I am. So the fear of being seen is the fear of being yourself, which is based off of these beliefs that there's something wrong with you, something about you that's not safe. And these all come from, the the micro experiences. It's not always these big life traumas, right? Like it's so many things that are added up. It's what's on the TV that is telling us we'll be canceled if we speak a certain way. It's like all of these things are just being recorded that shape who we are. And it starts off right in, kindergarten and early education right away of you got to sit down, you got to be quiet, and you've got to be this, and you've got to please the teacher to get XYZ. You've got to please your parent. Like so much of our personality and our identity is built off of thinking we need to be XYZ just for survival mechanisms with caretakers.
Yeah. And I guess like that whole point of being seen
Mm,
equals rejection.
yeah, it can.
And like when you have that ingrained in you in a area, all areas, whatever of your life,
Yeah.
how do you alchemize that in terms of explaining it to people of like, well, here's actually what's happening for you.
It depends, it's definitely very situation specific, but it first starts with not rejecting it within yourself
Mm,
because often we rejected it before someone else did, right? Even if you maybe put on a performance and your parents like didn't really clap. Like I often will use an example where, like a 2-year-old might start dancing and then the parents are laughing at the 2-year-old dancing. So there's this feedback loop. But then later that day the little kid is coloring and they're just like, "Oh, that's nice." And they put it on the fridge. There's not a feedback loop. That little kid has internalized I need to perform or my artwork is being rejected or there's all these like micro internalized things that kind of come up and then in addition but what happens is that we take that on as a belief system, we take that on as a truth. And so the first thing you have to do is understand where the rejection is coming from, and it's almost always coming, I always say the call is coming from inside the house, it's always coming inside first. But because we hold that in our energy field, that is the experience that's also reflected back to us. So now we then also have all this proof that this thing about me gets me rejected. But the
mm.
second we accept it within ourselves, that changes. And then it also leaves room to go back and do the work we need to do from the person that maybe did reject us. But it's truly coming within yourself and saying, why are you rejecting that about yourself? And often just flipping the switch to think, if you see somebody else doing XYZ, the stories that you're internalizing about yourself, are you thinking that about that person? Because you're usually not. Usually you're not having those thoughts, but you've internalized these as your own. So it's always self acceptance is going to be the very first step.
Yeah, and in terms of self-acceptance, like, do you have any tips and tricks on, how to do that, to notice like, oh, I really am putting myself down here in this situation, or, Do you have any go-to tools for that?
Yeah, one that I always use is like looking at whatever the thing is as your superpower. So, and understanding that even before it becomes a superpower, if I can figure this out, it will be my superpower. So, like, one thing people always compliment me for is my ability to articulate a point. But my biggest wound in life is that I've always been misunderstood and I haven't been able to communicate. So, isn't that crazy? And that's the
I
thing
mean,
that
but do you find that like that often happens? Like the thing that you're most revered for is often like that is so true.
always.
Yeah.
So the same thing with whatever you're looking at that needs to be accepted, if you can approach it in the way that like I know once I figure this out, this will be my superpower, it all of a sudden takes the barrier down of like why you're trying to do this or the way you're trying to figure it out. And then really going into, what would happen if I did accept this about myself? What am I truly afraid of? And most of the time with that fear of being seen, we're also afraid of love. We're afraid of being accepted because what if it gets taken away? And so there's all these like mirrored aspects where it's like you're afraid to be yourself and you're equally as afraid of being accepted as you are of rejection. So then we start working on that, and then it becomes a little bit easier to start accepting who you are if you're not afraid of it's really having that sovereignty in yourself so that like the things outside of you are not as important and we're not placing these things on pedestals.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Like we often think we fear rejection,
Mhm.
but I think we have less armor or tools to know what to do with acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the fear of rejection, fear of acceptance, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of being poor, fear of being wealthy. Like we're almost always in fear with both ends of those spectrums.
Yeah.
And it's finding like that middle pendulum balance, right? But it's like we're almost always afraid of both of those extreme reactions.
Yeah. And how do you equate like the fear of being seen to the fear of being wrong? Because we do live in a very precarious cancel culture where, other people may have their opinions that maybe we could live with, but the
Mhm.
fact that these opinions could damage our income, could damage our reputation, that it isn't even based in reality. Like that's a big legitimate fear.
Yeah, absolutely. So usually when someone brings this up, there's a couple of things I look at. Is one, if you are operating from the place of love, you're not going to be canceled. Even if a ton of people disagree with you, you're going to then magnetize the people. It's really only when you're doing it from a place of, disembodiment, or if you're doing it out of like a low frequency vibration from shame or hate or any of those like lower
Yeah.
emotions, right? If you're
Yeah.
doing it from a place of love, the thing is when you communicate in any public forum, whether it be social media or on a stage or whatever, you're going to be misunderstood by people. It is not possible. Like I will put out a piece of content. I'll have 100 people be like, this is exactly what I needed to hear today. And then I'll have another 100 who are like, you didn't say anything. This is useless. Like it's so different reactions because they're all at different levels. And one piece of content isn't going to serve every person. So like when we look at it as far as being canceled, if you're coming from love, you're not going to be canceled. You absolutely might repel people, but you're also going to magnetize your people to you.
Mhm.
So you have to just look at, are you coming from love? And if you are, you're not going to be canceled. The divine will have you. But the part of being wrong is that you're not going to ever have full agreement. It's just not possible. And people are viewing content or anything really through their own perception, their own lens, and they're coming from very different places, right? And like I could put a piece of content out and it's hitting, a single mom who's exhausted at the end of the night doing dishes, and I'm like, anything is possible. That is probably very triggering for her, right? Versus
Mhm.
somebody who's in a very different. So you have to understand people are looking at these through different lenses. But also the fear of being wrong is like, I did a post on this recently talking about how as individuals we hold ourselves to these like insane standards. Like doctors and lawyers practice medicine and law, and those are arguably two of the most important professions where there are life and death circumstances all the time. They are practicing, even though they know there's human error, that it's not possible to get everything
Mhm.
right at the same time. When we look at medical research, there's new research that comes out all the time with more information, and they'll tell you this is healthy. Oh, they used to tell us smoking cigarettes is healthy. Now it's not. Now it's like it changes. And so it's okay for your opinion to evolve and change as you do too. Like you don't have to speak from absolute truth all the time. And then, understanding that your truth may not be someone else's truth. And that's okay too. And to express from a place of not needing people to like or validate it, because as soon as you need that, you repel it and you will attract the people who give you the opposite. But if the validation comes from within and you're just sharing because you have this thing to share, that's when you attract your people. But yeah, I think to answer your question with the cancellation, if you come from a frequency of love, you will not be canceled.
I think that's such a beautiful loop back to what you were saying before. Like when you're, you know, when you attach an outcome to the being
Mhm.
seen,
Yes.
then it is going to distort the way in which you present.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And I always tell people like, do not get caught up in the matrix metrics, which to me
Yeah.
are views, engagement, like, comments, all of those things, because A, you have to learn to clap for yourself no matter what is happening, right? Because even if you go viral, even if you've got a huge following, there's gonna be days where nobody else is applauding you, and you have to be able to like applaud for yourself and keep showing up. But I've also had people, I've had videos go out there and have them not go anywhere and like quote unquote perform really low. But those are like also videos I'll get DMs on where someone's like, this changed my life. This made me
Mm.
go do XYZ. So it's like, you're never going to know your true impact. And if you're measuring it just by the matrix metrics, then like you're really missing the opportunity for impact that you have.
Yeah, I hate metrics. Like
Yeah.
I really just detest them. Like it's like
Yeah.
they completely derail authenticity and purpose. What is what price are we paying? What is the
Mhm.
cost of holding this fear of being seen?
Mm. I mean, it's everything. It's the deepest cost because what is the point of living life if you can't even know who you are or be yourself, right? Like what even matters in life if you have no idea who you are and you're just going through the motions? For the person, which is most people who are here to express something, it's the most painful experience to be suppressed, especially when you're the one suppressing yourself, right? And so I mean, it's everything. It's your physical health. Like I would have thyroid issues before I started speaking up. I had like hypothyroidism. I had a cyst on my thyroid. All of that cleared up when I started speaking. It's like that energy was so clogged. It causes autoimmune issues, but also the fear of being seen keeps you from the very connection that you so badly want,
Yeah.
which is to be accepted and loved. It's blocking your money. What I always teach people is like our authentic identity that lives within us is how we access everything. It's Christ consciousness, it's God's kingdom within, it's the abundance that is our birthright, it's all of those things. Those exist in our authentic identity, which is why, and I talk about this from like a form of spiritual warfare, but it's why there is so much warfare on our identities to distort who we are and to silence us. So the cost of staying hidden, I mean, it's to me, it's death, is how I describe it. And that's how it feels.
I mean, especially now with the state of the world, and I mean, just today where you live, you know, the algorithm being controlled and in a
Yeah.
way like that self, that authentic self being tapered or marginalized if it is
Mhm.
authentic and it goes against what someone else wants of you.
Right.
But I think that it's so beautiful to look at yourself and just be like, you know what, like maybe what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Like what
What
is
is
the worst that can happen? And
it?
and all those rejection wounds and things like that, you know, that are holding us back. But what would you say to someone who is like, okay, like I I can maybe get my head around the fear of being seen stuff, but what I can't get my head around is how do I even attempt to explore authenticity?
Yeah.
Because I don't know who I am because we are so conditioned, or life has gone on and I've done these things and I think I'm happy, but am I, you know, and all those big questions.
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say is to look at where you don't feel fulfilled. Like,
Mm,
what are you seeking outside of yourself, right? Like, whether you're seeking more love, more money, more significance, look at the things that you're seeking because those hold the areas where, on some level, you're not fulfilled. And then, if we, kind of backtrack that fulfillment maybe into these parts of you that need to be acknowledged. So, I would look at, what are you still seeking? Where are you not fulfilled? I would look at Sometimes it's easier to start to dismantle the fake identity versus finding the real identity, the authenticity within you. So sometimes it's easier to start looking at the masks that you've been wearing. So like I'll always ask people, if you can't explain who you are using your roles, I'm a mother, a father, a CEO or whatever, if we take all of that away, how would you answer this question? And so some
That is
right?
a good question.
Yes.
I
And so it's
challenge
like
you, if you're listening to this, describe yourself without your roles. That's hard.
it is. It is. And then you start to see how attached you are to those roles. And then you
Yeah.
can start to see like why, right? Like I was really attached to being a successful corporate executive. I wanted to be seen as successful. That made me feel like I would be relevant or important, or good enough or worthy. And my corporate role gave was so much of my identity. So when I left that, or I left, being certain family members, like all of these things, it's like that's when I realized my identity crumbled. But if I were to really look, the identity was never there. I just couldn't see that. So yeah, look at what you're seeking, look at the roles, and start to take the masks off. Where do you show up in your life as a people pleaser? Where are you watering down the thing that you're saying because you're trying to control how it's going to be received in the boardroom or how your partner is going to receive it? Like just start with the little things versus a big piece, because it's all these little pieces that kind of come together to make that like full mosaic identity of who we are.
Do you think people think, maybe have a little bit of perception that if they were to really go authentic, like and really say what they wanted to say and really show up the way they wanted to show up, that like they would go too far? Because I kind of feel like, like people don't trust themselves to be like, actually, maybe you think you're going to go too far because that's how hard you're held back. But
Yeah.
actually, the length you'll go to is you're probably going to, like you say, we hold ourselves to a high esteem and account. And I think that, yeah, that's true, we do. So what makes you think you're going to cross your own boundaries?
Right. It's so true. No, I think people are totally afraid of unleashing themselves,
Yeah.
because like that pendulum will swing the other way, right?
Yeah.
And those are the times where you do need to make sure you're operating from a frequency of love, because, I've definitely seen people come out swinging, which I love, and I think any form of expression is beautiful, but they're coming from a place of trauma.
Yeah.
And so then they can unleash in a way that it's not productive for anybody.
Yeah.
And they don't feel good after they've done that. So it's like I think if as long as you operate from love, you like literally cannot mess things up, because it's going to temper what you put out there and how you put it out there in a way that isn't like suppression, but to make sure that like you're doing this from the right place and you're not just trauma dumping on somebody or going
Mm.
out there and trashing your ex because of XYZ or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people are totally afraid, because I think people are also afraid of understanding what they're actually capable of and seeing what their potential is. Because once you see what your potential is, it requires you to live a different life.
Yeah. In the best possible way.
Totally. But
Like,
that's
and
scary at the same time.
totally, because and I think like that fear of being wrong, it's just like, well, maybe that we hold that so deeply within ourselves because it's like, well, what if I see my potential and then now that I've seen that and I can't unsee that, I now have to maybe end like you have a lot in your life that you used to accept or you used to want. And then that grief of then thinking that you're wrong, you're not wrong, you were just operating from what you knew at that time. And then the
Yeah.
potential just shows you a little bit more, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, because to see your potential, to up level your life, things have to fall away, because there's always
Yeah.
going to be things taken on that weren't in alignment. I mean, I know even after I started my visibility journey, like I still was losing things in my life because those were developed out of this old identity that was never me to begin with.
Yeah.
So it is, to see your potential is also to see where you've limited yourself and to have to realign and maybe have difficult conversations but it all just comes down, I think, to change. Like change is just, it's scary and it's hard for people to make, because to truly change and surrender requires you to go into the unknown, and people are terrified that something better doesn't come. I think that's like the main,
Yeah.
like they just, I know for me anyways with my clients, they always want to know if I leave like, is my soulmate out there if I leave this partner?
Oh my gosh. Like we would be so rich if every single one of our clients gave us an extra dollar for that question. We
Right?
wouldn't be here, we'd be in holidays. But that is so, so true. And yeah, like if I knew the outcome, I would do it. And I'm like,
Right.
well, but you're the old you right now. So how can the old you even know the outcome that the new you would even want?
Right.
I-
Totally.
If you go through with that, that is so true. That makes me giggle because, yeah, I don't know how many times I've been in that conversation with people.
I mean, almost every conversation, right? Or is like the better job or the business, like it's always like, is
Yeah.
this other thing going to be? And I know, and I used to think that way too. And it's not even to say I don't, still sometimes that will come
Mm.
up and I have to like self-correct, right? But I know my guides showed me one day, that surrender is not like, oh, I'm just allowing myself to be guided. True surrender means you are willing to not only let something burn down, but to light the match yourself if you know it's getting you where you need to go. So it's like that's surrender when you can look at it and say, I don't want my worst case scenario to happen, but I'm also willing to let it happen if I know it gets me to where I'm trying to go. And that's when you know you're actually in surrender, is
I
you're willing
love, I love that. I love that.
so much faith that the thing
Yeah.
on the other side of this is better. And that's what my guides literally showed me that one day. They were just like, "Here's the match," and I was like, "No," you know.
Well,
They
how do you deal with those no moments? Like we've all been in them, and I don't. Again, there's no exact science to it. I've sometimes just been like, well, I don't have a choice, or um, maybe I'm just gonna have fun with this. But how do you deal with that? Like when your insides are screaming no, or you're dealing with the grief of letting go of, that corporate identity. I remember I used to be a teacher. It was really hard for me to let go of like, well, who would I be if I wasn't like the Miss Leo kindergarten teacher? Like there's a lot of social currency in that, and a lot of simplicity that you get in life from that. How do you deal
Yeah.
with that?
So when it comes to navigating fear and wanting to say no, there's a couple of things that I'll do is like one, I always kind of sit there and I'm like, what am I afraid is going to happen? And I
Mm.
do have like a affirmation I say to myself, like, if XYZ happens, there is a version of me who knows how to handle it that will step forward in that moment and not a moment sooner. Like she is on standby, she is here, and I know she'll come through, right? And that's also like I know the divine is working, is going to channel through, but there's a version of me who knows how to handle that. She'll step forward if needed. And then I also kind of sit there and think about what I'm usually afraid of isn't the unknown, it's something bad that has happened before repeating itself, right? So then I'm like, well, I've already been through that, so I know how to navigate it. And it would suck if it happened again, but like I know I can make it. I know, and I can look back at these things with 2020 hindsight. So in those no moments, I try to go the logical route of like, okay, we've done it before. The worst part of life is over. We know that every time we move into the unknown, good things do happen. It's always scary. We have to let certain things go. But I like logically talk myself through that. I do have unwavering faith in the divine, which I didn't have before the visibility journey. That whole this whole last year and a half is like what really helped me anchor that in because I saw the magic that would come through.
Mm.
I followed the things that didn't make sense. So those are ways I always talk myself through it. And then for me, I just remember the pain of staying stuck for 36 years and there's no way I'll ever go. It was the most painful. Like now being not stuck, I'm like, that is the most painful place to be. That's why I do what I do, is because I know how it feels to feel stuck and not know how to get out of it. And I will not go back to it. Even if I have to burn things down left and right, like I will not go back to that. So that's kind of where I go mentally. And same with the grieving process of just knowing that whatever's being taken from you, whether it's that identity or it's people or whatever, it's creating space for something that's far more aligned because it's also, I'm not willing to pay the cost of holding on to things that require me to be someone I'm not.
Yeah. And I love what you said then. I think that we don't talk about it enough, that faith is a lived experience.
Mhm.
It's not something you get or you buy or you try on. It's just a lived experience.
Yeah.
Simple as that. But hard as that. But as simple as that.
But it is that simple. And it's not until you go into the unknown that you even give the divine a chance to show you the fate, right? To like experience it. You have
Yeah.
to go into the unknown or let something go or whatever it is. But I think that's why 2020 hindsight is important for people to look at, because it's like there are so many times I lost jobs or relationships or things that happened, and in the moments they were devastating. But then you look
Mm.
back and you're like, okay, well, I get why that happened. And so if you can come into that moment of like, there's a bigger picture at play that I can't see yet, that you can kind of tap into that faith. But it's experience is earned with that, and that does require leaps of faith for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to speak to myself in
Hmm.
gratitude from my future self. So I do these with small things first. So like I'll give you a really lame example, but last night I was really tired and I did not want to wash my hair. But I knew that if I didn't wash my hair, then I would have to get up at like 5 this morning because I jumped on at 7 a.m. for podcast interviews. And so as I dragged myself into the shower, I was like, thank you so much for washing your hair last night. Thank you. Like I was like talking to myself as that future self. And this is helping me to build up the muscle for the big, risky, scary, fearful things that I can do. So imagine if it's like, applying for a job or reaching out to someone and, to be able to say to yourself, oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking that guy out. Or thank you so, if that's your thing, or thank you so much for applying for that job, even though you didn't get it. Thank you so much for doing that. Because now you got clarity that that job isn't for you or that thing isn't for you, so
Right.
we can like reverse engineer, I guess, in a way.
I love that. I love that. I have a thing kind of similar to that. Every night at the end of the night, I take 15 minutes to set future Kristen up for a good day tomorrow.
I'm more like that's future Kirsten's problem.
I love it. But you did wash your hair, so that's
I
always
did,
good.
I did, I did wash my hair. And like I was very appreciative this morning of that, something I didn't have to do before I jumped on. So you can look at it like that. If you
Yeah.
were to kind of like bring this in, I really want to inspire, like, because looking at your content, just go, like, the links are in the show notes. Go check out Kristen's page because you're going to get so much inspo and insight. But I would love for you to like leave us by talking to that version of yourself or that woman, especially a woman, because I think this is a woman thing, who is standing there going, I don't know where to start with this. Now that
Yeah.
you're potentially on the other side of that journey, I think it's a journey that will continue to evolve for you, like
Mhm.
everything. But like now that you've been through this focused attention on being seen, what do you tell the woman who is not even at the starting lines of that? What would you like her to know?
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say to her, and even to the previous versions of myself, to take the pressure off. You cannot mess this up. You cannot take a wrong step. And there is something really beautiful inside of you that the world also deserves to experience and that you deserve to experience. And no one's asking you to post the content today. It's just taking one step forward to start the journey. So don't look for the right step, but just start taking actions that get you closer to who you are. Follow your light. Your light is always your guide, the thing that makes you excited, the thing you like to spend time doing, the rabbit holes, that's going to be the path. So don't overwhelm yourself, but there's so much beauty inside of you you haven't even tapped into. And just know that when the world finally sees the real you, they're going to absolutely love you.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think that that's a beautiful place to leave it. But I just want to say thank you for facing your fear of being seen because as soon as, and I will say, testament to that actually, now that I'm thinking about it, in showing up authentically, someone who is like obviously intuitive immediately went to you, immediately knew that this is real. This is not a performance. And this woman is gifted. And so there's the testament. When you follow your light, when you show up, the other aligned people will be like straight on to that. I literally probably watched 10 of your videos and quickly found your email and emailed you straight away. And so that showing up, like, it does create beautiful connection with others beyond than that you would have planned for. So
Totally.
thank you. Thank you for facing your fear of being seen because you're helping so many other people along the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. This was so fun and it was great to chat with you.
I encourage you go straight to the show notes now, click on your links, and thanks so much for being part of our Light Path community.
Thank you for having me.